Hi, thanks for coming. This is not really a happy subject. And my intent in talking about this is to shed some light and hopefully make our society a better place for it. In talking about transgender people, it sort of encompasses a whole group of other people: gays, lesbians, bisexual, all sorts of issues with sex. But let me talk about transgender. Transgender people are people that have two things in their mind. One is they remember on an emotional basis a past life. And they remember that life as being really happy, sexually fulfilling. So when the moment of death came for them, when the swirling of thoughts, okay, when people are drowning, you have the people say, "Oh, I saw my whole life pass in front of me." That's that swirling, and out of that swirling rises the predominant thought in their life. And of course, if they had a very good sexual relationship, that's what they think about at the moment of death. But there's also something else going on. Remember I said there was two things. The life of a transgender is not a happy life. Statistics say 40% of the people before they're age 21 think or attempt suicide. Again, this is past karma. I'll tell you a short story to illustrate this issue. There's a very famous Indian story, not famous in the West, called the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata culminates, the story of that culminates in a battle, okay? And out of that battle comes such great things as something called the Bhagavad Gita. It's called the Song of God. But other things also came out. And that was a time in which karma came to a head for many people. During the battle, the king of Duryodhana and his 100 brothers, or his 99 brothers, wanted to find out what was happening on the field of battle. So a guy named Sanjay was appointed to observe the battle and tell the king what happened every day. The battle went on for 18 days. And every day Sanjay would come and report to the king. And both sides agreed to this. After about 3 days, though, the side of the Pandavas, which was opposite the king's son, were losing. And the generals came up to Arjuna and said, look, we think this Sanjay is a spy and we want to kill him. It just so happened that Sanjay was standing right there. So these generals weren't taking any prisoners, were they? It just so happened that Arjuna's friend, Krishna, was standing there also. And he heard this, and finally he said to the generals, look, let me prove that Sanjay is not a spy. He says, I'm going to throw a javelin up in the air, and it's going to come down directly on Sanjay with all of his negative karma. Remember karma. We're talking about sexual issues here. Okay. So I'll tie it in a second. So Krishna turned to Sanjay and said, look, Sanjay heard all this. He said, Sanjay, stand over there. Sanjay did as he said. Krishna got a javelin from one of the generals who was holding it. He hefted it. He looked at the general who he'd taken it from, and he says, what do you think? And the general said, because he was going to get what he wanted. He was sure Krishna was going to throw that javelin directly at Sanjay. Sanjay knew that too. So Krishna throws it up in a big arc. As it turns and starts to come down, there's this terrific roaring, louder than a jet plane. It was just the sound of the universe coming to an end. Came straight at Sanjay. And just before it was to hit him, that javelin turned into a garland of flowers and went around his neck. That was all of Sanjay's negative karma. What does this mean for transgender people? Remember, I said they're not happy. They're so unhappy they try to commit suicide almost 50% of the time. The reason they are feeling this is that they abused somebody else in a sexual way in a past life. So this is this karma coming back to them. Let's talk about science for a minute. You know, there's always this argument when you talk about people and their characteristics, the question of nature versus nurture. And they say some people theorize that the DNA somehow is responsible for this transgender state. Well, if that was the case, then you would think identical twins would always have the same gender preference. But that's not true. They've done studies, and what they found is that 20% of the people that are twins, identical twins, go on to become transgender. So 1 in 5. So maybe there's a predisposition to the DNA, because I'm sure it's much higher than it is with other twins. But the point is that one becomes transgender and the other doesn't. And they're quite different in that respect. The only, and you could say, well, it's nurture. Well, they were brought up in the same household. They had the same stuff. Not likely. The only real conclusion you can come to is that the transgender person was reincarnated from a past life. They did something to people, somebody or some things. And this is their punishment, along with the law of the last thought. The law of the last thought is the most powerful law of karma. What to do about this? Well, first of all, you need to understand that this was from karma. The very first thing that people should do when they're involved with a transgender person is treat them kindly. Understand that this is something that they have brought on upon themselves, and that law of karma is working inexorably in their life. So it's not as if they have really a lot of choice. So conversion techniques and stuff like that have been outlawed because what scientists have found out is they don't work. Okay. What will work? Well, first of all, treat people kindly. If you're not a transgender person, you want to understand them, treat them kindly. I don't think you would want their pain and suffering. Second, you can't change karma if you don't know about it. We are coming into a time period when proof of reincarnation is coming on a scientific basis. Tantra, what I believe in, says be happy. Make yourself happy the next instant. This is good advice for transgenders as well. Accept who you are at this moment. This is due to something that's stronger than your present life can deal with. So you need to roll with the punch that life has dealt you. Tantra also, just to give you some information, has developed techniques that uses the sexual energy to make you more aware of who you are. And they can create these sexual states that were so dominant in past lives. And they can make it come forth again. But it's a very sensitive area, to say the least. And it requires some training. And so that's not really appropriate at this time to talk about it. But even to know that that exists will give you a way forward. I wanted to do my best to help you with some information that, if you study it, will make you happier than you've ever been before in your life. Okay, so if you're interested, send me an email. We'll talk privately. Be happy. Know that you can be happy. Leave this unhappiness behind. Thank you.